We were men of violence. Crime was our way of life. Drug taking, fighting, doormen, debt collectors, minders. And this is our story about how our lives have changed. This is the story of Tough Talk.
My name's Arthur White. I had everything that you'd want in life, but an adulterous affair and a drug addiction nearly destroyed it all. I then had an encounter that turned my life around. I'd been training since I was about 14 years of age. I started to compete in powerlifting. I've been 6 times British champion, 4 times European champion, 3 times world champion. I had really what everybody would say, materialistically, you would want in life. I had success in my marriage, I had success in my business, I had success in my sporting career. In my mid-30s, when my life should have really been becoming good and easier, it went drastically wrong. I got heavily involved in the taking of anabolic steroids, and I also got heavily involved in the taking of cocaine, and it actually started to destroy me. You really do lose focus of what is normal. So there's this huge buzz that's going through you, speed and aggression and power. A feeling of invincibility, you know, as if nothing could really harm me. I started to work as a nightclub doorman. I started to run an illegal debt collecting business. I used to carry with me a 12-inch diver's knife strapped to my arm. My life started just to crumble around me. I remember one particular incident. It was in February of 1992, drug-related incident, and I had to sort a problem out. I came over to this club. I remember I was dressed like something out of a Rambo movie. I had a singlet vest on, a pair of trainers, tracksuit bottoms, and I came to this club. The guy came out the door, and I chased him. I remember stabbing him twice in the back, and I pinned him on the floor, and I started to cut his ear off. I didn't want to kill him, but I wanted to teach him a lesson. And I remember, as I was down there, I was on the floor, the knife was at his ear, and I remember hearing a voice called out to me to stop. I got up, I put the knife away, and as I turned around, this whole area was filled up. There was 200 or 300 people. The club had emptied by this time. And I thought, you've blown it this time. I'm in an area that was off my patch. I was in North London, not East London. And I thought, I'm never going to get out of this alive. But the crowd parted, and I thought my reputation preceded me. And the crowd parted, I walked through, I got in the car, and I drove off. I had an adulterous affair with a young woman. I left my wife, deserted my children. I lost my business, my homes, my cars, my money. Everything and anything that ever meant anything to me, I lost. My wife eventually said no more and turned her back. She said, you're now on your own, no more, I'm not going to help you anymore, it's over. And that, to me, was the first time in my life I truly felt alone. I needed help. I needed to choose what to do in my life. And I remember it was a freezing cold March morning. I'd been to work collecting money that particular morning. I'd started at midnight. My life was absolutely messed up. I was in the pits. And I remember asking God to come into my life. The peace come over me. The fear went from my life. The paranoia went from my life. I took my knife off and threw it in a skip. I went home. I emptied, I had a toilet bag full of drugs. I just threw them away. And there was just something going on in me. And I could feel a presence that is impossible really to describe. Since I've been a born-again Christian, a believer and a follower of Jesus Christ, my health has been fully restored to me. My heart is normal. My marriage fully restored. My wife and I got remarried in 1993. I have the love and respect of my children. I have a home. I have everything that I need in life. Not necessarily everything I want in life, but everything I need in life. I stood on the platform last October and I won my 3rd world title, drug-free. Jesus Christ has truly restored everything to me. I am a born-again man. I'm a man that's had 2 bites of the apple. I'm very grateful, man. If Jesus Christ can change my life, he can change anyone's life.
My name's Steve Johnson. I embarked on a life of boozing and brawling from my mid-teens until a chance encounter changed my life. And if you come from Dagenham like me, absolutely everybody loved West Ham. This was a place which for me evoked a sense of belonging. But West Ham was so much part of my life, it was something I worshipped, that I would have died for them. If you know Dagenham, it's actually getting worse crime-wise. I bought an advent calendar here at Christmas and even the windows on that were boarded up. Many things have happened in my life, but I believe that the path I was going down was dominated from that early age by the desire to get drunk as often as possible and lead a really crazy social life. Actually, like a large proportion of the kids I was brought up with. When somebody offered me a job working on the door of a pub and they were prepared to pay me to hang around getting drunk, I thought it was fantastic because I was doing that anyway. For a whole period of my life, 10, 15 years, I never went anywhere without some form of weapon. Whether it was a Stanley knife, an iron bar, a can of CS gas, a knuckle duster, whatever. And I've progressed from this young lad that liked a beer to finding myself driving around the East End carrying a gun and wearing a bulletproof vest. Where I come from in Dagenham, 90% support West Ham. And it's in your blood. It's not a choice, it's more like an illness. We were fantastic on this pitch. It just brings back so many happy memories. I've got a kind of a lump in my throat. I remember one game against Manchester United, it'd be in the 70s now. They'd been smashing every ground up in the country. Me and all my pals and thousands of others were down Green Street and there was trouble in the streets all day, leading right up to the game. But in those days, there was nothing sophisticated or even planned about the violence, it just happened. I remember turning up at this ground, this is how it used to be, turning up at the main entrance, which we just walked through, when my pal had a 6-foot flagpole with a point on the end. And he was surprised when the old Bill took it off him because he'd had it in there for 6 weeks on the trot. And those were the days of the police horses. The great big horses, they used to frighten the life out of me. They've only got to tread on your foot and you're done for. You'd be walking down the street, a surge had happened, and before you knew it, you was involved in some kind of melee, and out had come the horses and everybody had to disappear. We went for the football, but we expected a fight. And it usually happened. I was running a shop in East London and completely out of the blue a geezer appeared at the door of my shop. It was like me, he was like one of us. He was a stocky, shaven-headed, tattooed geezer. And as we shared on our backgrounds, he kind of winced when I told him the sort of geezers I was hanging about with. And I could see him taking it on board. And as he went to leave that shot that day, he turned round and he said, "Steve, give me 5 more minutes of your time." I said, "You go on, mate. What can I do for you?" He said, "I was a bit like you once." He said, I was an alcoholic and I had an 8-year drug addiction. He said, "But something changed my life." Now, bear in mind, I didn't think my life needed changing. It was an absolute mess. But I didn't think it needed changing. But he said to me, "Jesus Christ came into my life." Well, I thought I'd been hit by a brick, I really did. And through him I met a lot of other, what I would say were normal everyday people that were born again Christians. I met ordinary people, not just reformed lunatics and boxers, but bricklayers and barmen and painters and decorators and cab drivers. I never knew that Jesus came for ordinary people. I actually feel that God's grace and forgiveness has come upon me by the fact He's straightening my life out. Real men can be Christians, ordinary people. Jesus Christ is the greatest bloke that's ever walked this earth, but He's much more than that. I would say investigate it. Investigate Jesus, you've got nothing to lose. Following Jesus Christ is the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me in my life. Steve Johnson, just another bloke from Dagenham, who took things to greater extremes than most of his mates, but realised that Jesus Christ could turn that round. So I asked him to turn that round and he did.
My name's Marcus Williams. Although I was brought up in a Christian home, I went off the rails a bit, and it took a freezing cold prison cell to bring me back to my senses. I can come across as cocky, very loud, but I'm very friendly, quite charming, very happy-go-lucky, and very giving. We grew up, we was a Christian family. We used to go to church every week. I didn't always want to go. My understanding of God was that He was the great being who created everything. I believed in Him, but it was just something that was more or less handed down through my family. Into my teens, I started breaking into parking meters and stuff like that, and I'd go to court for fighting and whatever. I've got a couple of suspended sentences, I've got a couple of fines and whatever. I was never really a violent sort of a child, but I did find myself getting into a lot of fights. I started bodybuilding at about, in my late teens, I was about 19, 20, and I started competing about 5 years after that. Now, I started taking steroids at probably at an age of about 23. I think I did my first competition when I was about 24. I qualified for the British Championships. I just loved looking good and feeling strong and big and muscular. I suppose it was more of a self-indulgence more than anything. My lifestyle at the time was just basically working on the door, Thursday, Friday and Saturday nights, and I was probably as far away from God as I've ever been. When you're doing the door a lot of nights a week, you can get into a pattern and into a mode of thinking that isn't really that healthy. You're just ready for any kind of violence. I was involved in an incident about 10 years ago on this very boat. It was a disco night, and there was a fellow who started a bit of trouble with me. I think he pushed me or something, so I pushed him back, and with that he's pulled a knife out of his pocket and he's quickly shoved it in my stomach. I didn't realise I'd been stabbed, because what I did, you see, I grabbed hold of him and I literally tried to throw him over into the Thames. I wanted to kill him. Now, something made me look down at my stomach and I realised there was blood coming out. And with that, I put him down. I walked off of the boat onto the embankment, got in my car and drove myself to St Thomas's Hospital, which is just up the road here. And the doctor said to me that had I not had the muscle that I had, I probably would have died. So I believe that was another time the Lord saved my life. I was involved in an incident. It ended up getting me a long stint in prison. I'm not proud of it in any way, but that was where I was at that time. If anybody says to you that prison is manageable, they're lying. If you can imagine fear, paranoia, hatred, anger, magnify them by 1,000,000 times each, you're still nothing near the feeling of going into prison. It's terrible. I felt like I'd been buried alive. I was banged up for 23 hours a day for the first 6 weeks of my sentence. And I think being banged up for 23 hours a day is enough to change anybody. I mean, it's either going to send you one way or the other. I learned so much about the God that loved me and knew me, but I chose not to follow him. When you don't realise that God will not be mocked, you think you can get away with things and you don't take him seriously. But unfortunately, some people like me need to be sat down and spoken to, and that is what God was doing to me, I believe. I still have friends, or associates, shall I say, who are still linked to that sort of life, but I just don't choose to mix with them anymore. They know I'm a Christian. They respect the fact that I'm a Christian because I respect them for who they are. They know my views. I've spoken to them. I won't ram anything down their throat. It's a message that I want to give them, and if they want to accept it, it's entirely up to them. Because I know one thing, and I tell them this as well. What have I lost when we both come to the end of our days? What have I lost? I've lost nothing if I'm wrong. If you're wrong, you've lost your life. Eternity. If it wasn't for the Lord, somebody would be putting flowers on my grave.
My name's Ian McDowell. For 15 years I worked as a nightclub bouncer in East London. My life was full of crime and violence, but that all changed on one night.
Power now, come on. Here we go, come on. Let's do it. Come on.
Let's go, come on. Last set.
Come on, come on.
Last set, come on. Come on.
Come on.
Last set, let's go.
Proper way.
Come on.
Come on.
Let's go.
Come on.
Let's go.
Come on. Proper way. Come on.
Up. Come on.
Bodybuilding filled a big vacuum that seemed to be in my heart or my life at that time. I remember feeling like my life wasn't worth living. Everything in life seemed, not important. And I remember as a kid, I always had these dreams and hopes that I'd be somebody. And suddenly finding myself unemployed and not being able to get a job and having no hope or future, bodybuilding suddenly filled that gap. And I decided that I would be the best in the world of bodybuilding. I would do whatever I could to win competitions, and as I was a young man, I started to find myself in newspapers and the bodybuilding magazines and stuff like that, winning trophies and competitions, and it just kind of increased. I kept thinking, I will be the best. The problem of that was I got to a stage where I made a decision to take anabolic steroids. And it was the usage of anabolic steroids that really destroyed my life. It was that got me involved in the doors and the crime. The problem with the door work is there was a massive part of me that enjoyed it. I enjoyed the buzz of having a bit of power on the door. I enjoyed the violence. The downside was when you're going home and you're on your own and you start to think about yourself. The fear that creeps in. always wondering who's going to come knock down your door, having a contract put out in your life, people telling you they're going to shoot you, and, making enemies, having your car blown up and things like that. There's a fear and a paranoia that works its way underneath that. 6 nights a week in the clubs, East London, all the time working, and so within that, maybe breaking up 3, 4, 5 fights a night, working some of the rougher areas in East London, and that has to have an effect on you, doesn't it? So just being a miserable person generally, really. The more violence you get involved in, the more it doesn't bother you anymore. The more times you hit someone, the less effect it has on you inside, and inside was becoming dark, and I just didn't care. I believe I lost the capacity to love and to be loved. My heart was full of anger and hatred, and I just hated people, really. It's a strange thing looking back. But really, it all came to a head one particular night. I was working in a club in North London, a place I've been working at for a couple of years, where I'd had all sorts of rows and fights every night of the week, made so many enemies in this part of London. Well, this was the night that really changed my life, and I remember it was like a night like any other, and we had a bit of a rowdy crowd in the back there, and they were tanked up, and you knew that there was going to be a bit of a pain. We'd had our eyes on them, and I knew it was going to kick off, so we went over, and there was about 5 of us working. We got around the guys, we started to move them, saying, listen mate, it's enough tonight. I remember as we got into the foyer, there was kind of the door area, and there was some people shouting and swearing, I remember, and it was like suddenly a couple of punches, and as they started to struggle, we started to push them, and then their arms were flying, and next thing, bundled them big time straight out the door. It was kind of a head first job. The doors come crashing open, we steamed them out here, smashed them out, and there was about 8 of them, I suppose, about 5 of us. We got them out here off the pavement area, and I remember literally, that's it, you've had enough, guys, and coming back and trying to bomb the doors up so that the night was over, and I remember as we got up to the steps, I told them they'd had enough and to get out of here, and I remember as we got inside, a couple of minutes, and suddenly, bang, bang. So we come barging out. Just at that point that we came out here, a petrol bomb, one of them had filled up and made a petrol bomb and smashed the door, and even though I was 2 weeks away from going to court, I remember, I knew that I had to do something about this. I thought otherwise we're going to get in all sorts of trouble. And I see the geezer, I clock him over here in the car park, so I come out in the car park, and here he still is with another petrol bomb straight in his hand, and I remember running up to the car park. He just stood there looking at me as if I was out of order. I shouted at him, what are you doing, and he's looked at me, he's gone like nothing, and he's a big tall bloke, and I remember cracking him straight in his mush. He's gone down, and I pulled out the knuckle dust, and I teared into him, and that's when I got all the blood all over me. I remember screaming, what do you mean nothing, you just turned the door, and as I said to you, it was the night that changed my life. I remember going home that night, and initially I felt proud about what had happened to me. Initially I felt, I dealt with the situation, I felt good about it. The boys had said, yeah, we've done the business, and as I started to drive home that night, that was the night I really started to think about the possibilities of God.
But what am I doing? Why am I living like this? What is life all about? Why am I like this? And this was the night I had the gun in the boot, the bat under the seat, I'm covered in blood, I pulled the car over, and I remember saying, Jesus, if you're real, could you forgive somebody like me? Could you change somebody like me? And that particular evening, I felt that love of God that I was telling you about saturate my heart. I felt as if my heart was cracking. My heart had been hard up until this point, and I remember as if it was kind of cracking, and I felt like this love, as if I was being embraced by a father loving me for the first time in my life, and I became a Christian that night. I sat and cried my eyes out, looking at the blood on my shirt. I said, Jesus, forgive me, change me, and my life has never been the same since. That was the night that changed my life.
As I started to go to church and as I started to pray to Jesus, I felt the paranoia, the fear, the hatred, the anger, it seemed to leave my heart. It seemed to disappear from me. I seemed to stop swearing. I just didn't feel like I wanted to do the things I used to do. I felt, and I believe I felt like I had the capacity to love again. I suddenly realised that, my family was important to me, and I neglected and abused my family, and I realised that, there was more to life than just selfish gain and ambition. God can restore and change me and the way I think and the way I feel. He can do it to anybody. Ian McDowell is different. I'm different from what I was, obviously, and now I would say I have the ability to love And that's why I do what I do. I don't believe I'm a do-gooder with nothing better to do than travel the country, sharing my story and telling people about Jesus. I do it because I really believe that Jesus is alive and my heart has been changed. And I can feel his love in my heart. And so Ian McDowell is a different man than what he was. I believe that with all my heart, the gospel is that God so loves this world, he sent his only son, that anyone that would believe in him should receive eternal life. That literally, Jesus Christ came, he died upon the cross, that our sins, the things we've done wrong, all the things we've done since we was young kids really, all the swearing and the backstabbing, all the gossiping, all the stuff that if you used to look back in your life and be honest with yourself, you'd know there's stuff you're not comfortable with, there's stuff you keep hidden in your heart. It's that stuff that God deals with. You may not have had an experience like Tough Talk, but the Bible says everyone has fallen short of God's standards, and we can be freely forgiven because of his son Jesus. That's exactly what happened to us. We all prayed this simple prayer.
Jesus, I'm sorry for the things I've done wrong.
I ask you to forgive me and to come into my heart.
And help me to turn my life around.
Jesus, I ask you to be Lord of my life from now on.
If you would like to contact Tough Talk, here are our details.
We don't try and preach at people or patronise or talk down. We tell the truth of our lives.
When people hear our stories, I think they think, if God can do something with these people, then surely there's hope for me.
The most important thing in Tough Talk is seeing people's lives change. It's showing people that there is hope.
We can go into prisons and drugs rehabs and schools and communicate with people. We speak the same language.